The rain hammered against the windshield as Mason Reed parked his delivery van behind the massive corporate headquarters at nearly midnight. His back ached from 14 straight hours of driving across the city, and his hands were stiff from gripping the steering wheel through traffic jams, missed elevators, and endless apartment stairs. Inside the insulated delivery bag beside him sat the final cold coffee and untouched sandwiches from a boardroom meeting nobody important bothered finishing. Upstairs, executives were panicking. The billion-dollar logistics company was collapsing faster every week. Delivery routes failed constantly. Customers complained daily. Investors threatened to pull funding. Consultants charged millions without solving anything. And while exhausted executives argued inside glass conference rooms, a struggling single father sitting alone in the parking garage quietly drew a simple map on a napkin. By the next morning, that napkin would begin changing the entire company forever. If you believe kindness, hard work, and second chances still matter in this world, take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Moments Hub for more emotional and inspiring stories. Mason Reed never planned to become a delivery driver for the rest of his life. At 39 years old, he once dreamed of building transportation systems that could improve struggling communities across America. Years earlier, Mason studied urban planning and logistics engineering at a respected university while working nights to support himself and his wife Elena. Professors admired his rare ability to understand how cities moved, traffic flow, neighborhood behavior, delivery efficiency, public transportation patterns. He saw connections most people ignored. But life changed brutally fast. During Mason's final year of graduate school, Elena became seriously ill while pregnant with their son Caleb. Medical emergencies consumed their savings almost overnight. Mason dropped out of school to work full-time, hoping he could eventually return later. Later never came. Elena passed away shortly after Caleb's birth. Suddenly Mason found himself alone, grieving, deeply in debt, and raising a newborn child while abandoning every dream he once carried. Years passed quickly after that. One temporary delivery job became another. Promotions never arrived because survival left little room for ambition. Eventually Mason stopped talking about the education he never finished because explaining failure hurt too much. Still, he loved Caleb fiercely. Every morning before sunrise, Mason prepared breakfast while helping his now 8-year-old son get ready for school. Their apartment was tiny, squeezed between a laundromat and an auto repair shop in a crowded neighborhood where sirens echoed through the night. Paint peeled from the walls. Heating barely worked during winter. Some months Mason chose between paying utility bills or replacing Caleb's worn shoes. Yet despite exhaustion, he protected Caleb's childhood carefully. He attended school events no matter how tired he felt. He read bedtime stories every night even after 14-hour shifts. And when Caleb asked why his father always carried notebooks full of strange maps and route sketches, Mason simply smiled quietly and called them unfinished ideas. The company Mason worked for, Swift Lane Logistics, had once been considered one of the fastest-growing delivery corporations in the country. But rapid expansion created chaos internally. Drivers constantly received impossible schedules designed by executives who never experienced actual delivery routes themselves. Packages arrived late. Fuel costs exploded. Entire neighborhoods remained underserved because corporate planners focused only on wealthy districts. Drivers complained endlessly. Management ignored them. Then came the winter that nearly destroyed the company completely. Severe storms crippled major cities for weeks. Delivery failures multiplied across multiple states while customers abandoned the platform rapidly. News outlets criticized the corporation publicly after elderly residents missed medicine shipments and small businesses lost inventory because routes collapsed during bad weather. Inside headquarters, executives hired expensive consultants who produced endless presentations filled with complicated charts and meaningless corporate language. Nothing improved. Meanwhile, Mason quietly noticed something everyone else missed. The company's routes were failing because nobody designing them truly understood how ordinary neighborhoods function day by day. Executives optimized routes based on theoretical traffic models and wealthy business districts while ignoring human behavior, school schedules, apartment elevator delays, local construction habits, and community movement patterns drivers experienced constantly. Mason carried years of observations inside his notebooks. But nobody cared what a delivery driver thought. One freezing night, after another exhausting shift, Mason delivered food trays to an emergency executive meeting inside headquarters. Through partially open boardroom doors, he overheard senior leadership discussing massive layoffs likely coming within weeks if the company failed to recover quickly. Fear hit him immediately. Without this job, he and Caleb would lose everything. As executives argued late into the night, Mason sat alone downstairs in the employee cafeteria staring at a city map printed on a discarded meeting packet. Quietly, almost instinctively, he began sketching routes across the paper napkin beside his coffee. Not just roads. Communities. Patterns. Human behavior. He mapped school release times affecting intersections. Apartment buildings where elevators slowed deliveries during specific hours. Neighborhoods where local shop owners accepted package storage safely reducing failed deliveries. Bus lane timing. Construction rotation patterns. Even weather drainage zones drivers avoided during storms. Years of invisible experience poured onto the napkin. Mason barely realized how much knowledge he carried until he finished drawing. Then something unexpected happened. A woman named Claire Bennett walked into the cafeteria. At 44 years old, Claire was the company's CEO. Brilliant, respected, and completely overwhelmed by the crisis threatening to destroy everything she spent years building. Unlike most executives upstairs, Claire originally came from a working-class background herself. But years of corporate pressure slowly distanced her from ordinary employees. That night, exhausted and unable to think clearly anymore, she wandered downstairs searching for coffee. Instead, she noticed Mason's map. At first glance, it looked simple. But within seconds, Claire realized she was staring at something extraordinary. The delivery driver sitting quietly in the empty cafeteria had mapped operational realities her multimillion-dollar consultants completely missed. She sat down beside him cautiously. Mason immediately looked embarrassed and tried hiding the napkin, assuming executives would laugh at him for pretending to understand company strategy. But Claire kept staring at the map silently. Then she asked him to explain it. Over the next hour, Mason described how drivers experienced the city differently from executives studying spreadsheets inside offices. He explained how human routines shaped efficiency more than algorithms alone. He showed her why certain, efficient, routes consistently failed because nobody accounted for real-world community patterns. Claire listened without interrupting. And slowly, something painful settled inside her chest. Because the exhausted single father beside her understood the company better than most people leading it. The next morning, Claire shocked the executive board completely. Instead of approving another expensive consulting contract, she ordered operational teams to test Mason's routing model across several struggling districts immediately. Executives resisted aggressively. Some mocked the idea openly after learning the proposal came from a delivery driver without completed credentials. Others accused Claire of desperation. But she ignored them. Within 3 weeks, the results became impossible to deny. Delivery efficiency improved dramatically. Fuel costs dropped. Customer satisfaction increased. Missed deliveries decreased across every test district using Mason's community-based routing system. Drivers themselves finally felt understood. For the first time in years, someone designing strategy actually listened to people doing the work. Claire promoted Mason into a temporary advisory role despite backlash from corporate leadership. Suddenly the quiet single father who spent years being invisible found himself standing inside conference rooms explaining operational realities to executives earning millions annually. The transition terrified him initially. He worried constantly about failing. About sounding uneducated. About embarrassing himself. But every night Caleb reminded him of something important. His father spent years surviving impossible situations already. Compared to that, speaking honestly felt easy. Meanwhile, Claire found herself increasingly affected by Mason's humility and quiet resilience. Unlike executives obsessed with status, Mason never chased recognition. He only cared about solving problems hurting ordinary workers and customers. One evening, Claire visited Mason and Caleb's apartment unexpectedly after a late meeting. The building shocked her. Broken stair rails. Flickering hallway lights. Tiny rooms barely large enough for two people. Yet inside the apartment she discovered warmth impossible to manufacture. Caleb proudly showed her homemade science projects while Mason cooked simple spaghetti in their tiny kitchen. Family photos covered the refrigerator beside hand-drawn route maps and encouraging notes Mason left for Caleb before early shifts. Claire realized something heartbreaking that night. The man helping save her billion-dollar company still struggled simply to survive. And despite everything life took from him, he remained kind. Months later, Swift Lane Logistics officially rebuilt its entire national strategy around Mason's community-based routing system. News outlets praised the company's remarkable turnaround while business schools studied the human-centered logistics model, transforming modern delivery systems nationwide. But the emotional moment that touched employees most came during the company's annual leadership conference. In front of thousands of workers, Claire walked onto the stage holding the original coffee-stained napkin Mason drew alone in the cafeteria months earlier. Then she told the entire company the truth. Their future was not saved by expensive consultants or powerful executives. It was saved by a struggling single father people overlooked every day. The audience stood applauding for nearly 2 full minutes. Mason looked overwhelmed standing beside Caleb in the front row while cameras captured tears quietly filling his eyes. Because for years, life convinced him his unfinished dreams no longer mattered. Until one small napkin proved otherwise. Before this story ends, tell us in the comments, do you believe ordinary people often carry extraordinary ideas the world ignores? As city lights reflected softly across headquarters windows later that evening, Mason realized something beautiful. Sometimes the people closest to the ground can see the clearest path forward. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share this video with someone who needs hope today. And subscribe to Moments Hub for more emotional stories that remind us greatness is often hidden inside ordinary lives.